So you said you had a question for us.
I do. So my question is, there's like a preamble, I guess. Just I talk about a lot of things to a lot of people, and I talk about your project with friends and family.
Well, thank you.
And the reactions have been very interesting.
Okay.
The reaction first, sometimes I slip up. Like the other day I said they walk 1 mile a day. It just came out the wrong way. And so the person I was talking to, I think was my mom, she was like, that doesn't sound like a lot. And I was like, no. They walk a marathon every day. And then the real reaction that I almost always get comes up, which is, it's like disbelief, anger, what do you mean? Wait, so you mean 26 miles? Which I kind of had too, like, do you mean that? And it's like, yeah, it's definitely a frustration with you guys, but not you, projected.
Yeah.
Why would they do that? Kind of like there's a background, is this healthy? Which is really unfounded. Yeah, and so I'm curious if you get that reaction also, specifically the anger part. That's what I'm curious about, but also how you feel this project has like changed the way people perceive you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I've had really much, at least like face-to-face anger reaction. Have you?
Anger might
I
be the
don't
wrong
think
word.
so.
It's like befuddlement.
Yeah, the befuddlement for sure.
We get that.
I am though. It's fun to hear. Like, I'm sorry that your mom was angry, but also
And anger is the wrong. It's a fun anger,
yeah,
because
fun
it's
anger.
art.
Because it's like, what? Why? What?
If she saw it in a museum, she would be like, I just saw the most interesting thing.
Yeah,
But
I
because
like
it's
it.
live,
Because it's happening.
yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
There's
I
a danger
also-
it poses to people, apparently.
Right. I like that though, because it's like the true, because we weren't there, like she might try to be polite if we had been there, and she might not
Yes.
have reacted with such strong feelings. But I love that it does give people such strong feelings.
Very much.
And I would love for people to react in their full way when they're talking to us too, because I like that. I like to know like that it is hitting some button. The question of is it healthy, I think honestly is a question we've asked ourselves too. I think when you hear marathon, you probably automatically think of running a marathon, which I do think if we were running a marathon, it would be harder on our joints.
Yeah.
But we're 3 months in, we still have 9 months to go. We'll see what our levels are at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's some weird numbness that's happening in my feet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but I'm not super concerned, because after 2 days break, which we do every week, it pretty much goes away. So
Yeah.
That'll be part of the journey to see what happens with that. But after the first 6 to 8 weeks, a lot of the pains that we were experiencing have pretty much gone away. So
Yeah.
the body definitely gets used to it. So we did have one person that told us, should we keep walking?
Of course,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I figured here we're at a great juncture,
Yeah.
so we think we're at the end of the park. We think we've made it. It's one of those great ending moments, and you can go to 15th Street Park Slope area.
Right.
Or,
Oh, but
you could enter
what's to the left?
what's to the left. Because, it's like in our heads we think this must be a square, and it's
Right.
really not a square.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one person before we started the project that just told us we weren't going to be able to do it.
There you
Oh,
go.
right. Yeah.
And
Isn't it so interesting?
that was,
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely tried to like not get in a fight with them, but it was like, you don't know us at all.
Yeah.
Like we had just met them.
It's their edge of reality that
Yeah.
you, with only, well, I call it just a poem. The poem is the sentence, we're going to walk 26 miles 5 days a week for a year. That poem was enough to break them a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ultimately healthy for
Yeah.
them, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
them dream.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and when we were planning it too, even with ourselves, it was, well, that's a little much. Like, does it have to be 26? Does it have to be can we do a half marathon? And it's like, and I think Mike really pushed it more than I did, where every time we tried to make it a little bit like less, it was, well, we lose that impact of this is outrageous. You know, what we're doing is really wild and like more than you would typically think someone could do in a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we interact with people while we're walking, it can be very difficult to get that all out. Like there's definitely a sense of modesty that I feel. And also like, yeah, it's a combination of modesty and like maybe I don't have the energy to, you know, tell people. Like when we talk to people, we usually just say we're doing a walking tour of all 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
Which could literally take a week.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing that the marathon aspect, and maybe it is because, you know, we're not interested in experiencing negative reactions, or I think more likely it just feels to me like there's people are it's going to jam them up where like we can't really have like the whatever conversation we're having at that moment will be interrupted by the fact that or they're just going to like ignore it, and then that's a weird thing too, where it's
we do occasionally run into people that like just, you know, someone at the garden center store that we happen to be at that's like, we just decide that we will tell this person what we're doing.
Your secret.
Our secret.
Your secret lifestyle.
Yeah. And sometimes the reaction will be, oh, okay. It's like,
yeah.
Wait, did you hear me? Like,
Dad, it just came out to you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's fine. You gonna bring your girlfriend for dinner?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, we've definitely had that happen a few times where people are like, okay.
And it's unclear if that's just them wanting to be polite and move the conversation forward, or, you know, or if it is just like maybe there are a lot of other people doing this kind of thing, and they're like, oh, okay, oh, my brother did that, you know.
I think it's even more the other way of like, it becomes like if you met someone who was delusional and told you that they were going to go talk to the president later today, you would say, okay.
Right.
And I think it's that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Except that, I mean, the thing I like so much about, or the reason I think about these things, and this kind of question, specifically like the negative part of it, is because I think that boundary is what's keeping everything together in a bad way. I think like the daily life prescribed for us that we're seeing falling apart, where there's no work during COVID for a lot of people, it's like every day we build our day together as a world with yesterday's garbage and junk, and we for the most part just keep making the same boring thing. And if you dare to not, it's really a confrontation to anyone who's invested in building that, or even more so to people who don't realize how much they need that.
Yeah.
Right.
So the fact that you might garner questions, how do you pay for this?
Right.
I think that question really upsets people. That I notice when I talk to people about monks. So I've been going to this monastery here and there, and the number one question people have isn't about why would you go or what's it like for you. It's how do they pay for it? As if that's not fair.
Right.
And why isn't it fair to live how you want to live?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it's just walking 26 miles a day or living in a monastery.
Right.
Yeah.
If only because you don't realize the mechanism of your own chains to whatever life you don't like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the answer is with money. Like we should, you know, it's like we figured out how to do it, and it was like, well,
which is strangely the same answer for the monks.
Yeah,
it's like they also work actually.
It's still within the system. We just don't happen to be taking on the additional heaviness of the starving artist, or the additional heaviness of the stressed out person that's trying to figure out how to pay, or, you know, we're giving ourselves these opportunities. We certainly have done all of the financial considerations needed to do this.
Which I appreciate on your website. I've never seen I think that's what really got me interested.
You're the first person to talk about it, and maybe the only person that's brought it up.
It's pretty radical. I hear a lot of organizations who want to do this, but it's so different, and I don't even trust it. If it's like an organization, there could always be a check that's being slipped in, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's almost irrelevant. Like
Yeah.
the fact that you've already done the paperwork to become an LLC or something, that's complicated. This
Right.
is just your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a really strong interest in transparency within the economic system of businesses. And I also, after taking a business class a few years ago, have come to the realization that every single person has the potential to be a business and or to be an entrepreneur or, you know, start a business of their own. And then when that relates to what we're doing, I think we're falling into some kind of gray area in other people's minds and even in our own of, you know, is this project an art project? Is this our personal life? Is this a business? Is it, you know, what is it? And so since there is a, you know, that is part of the project is paying for it, it feels good to just be transparent about that and sort of, you know, there's an element of people spending their time only feeling valued if there's a monetary value that's high enough for society to recognize it as being valuable, if that makes sense. And I hate that.
Can you say why? Can you put it into a few sentences?
Yeah, well, I think having a certain monetary value on either certain people, particular people, or particular tasks that we call jobs, or ways of life, it keeps people at an unequal standing, and it makes that boundary that you mentioned too, you know, it keeps people within the boundary of what makes money that funds my life that I'm not necessarily sure that I even have decided I want for myself.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot
Well
to do
said.
with the money aspect of our lives.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar listening with respect to the financial aspects of our project, if you go on our website, you'll see that we maintain a spreadsheet of sorts on the webpage that divides our costs up into fixed costs, food, clothing, podcast-related expenses, and miscellaneous expenses. And we update that once a month. We kind of started doing it every day, but it becomes a little much, so we kind of do it every month now. So if you might go on at any point, it might seem a couple weeks behind, but that's just because we can't keep up with it at that rate. But we thought it was important to track and have total transparency. And you know, there were plans, and there are still plans at some point, to be selling some merchandise. Jesse was wearing one of our dichotomies, but took it off because it was a little
Warm.
hot right now.
Yeah.
But you know, we were planning on having events as well, and that changed with COVID. So we intend to have an intake too that we'll be tracking at some point, but it's not a necessity in order to do the project.
Yeah.
And
And when it does start to happen, then we will track it and show, you know, how it's balancing out.
Yeah, yeah.